Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, a new patch is upon us. Version 2.6 in Wuthering Waves. And of course, with every single new patch that we're gonna get, there's gonna be an update, of course, to the Prydwen tier list. So without further ado, let's get right on into it. Let's see what the change list is looking like for all of the different tier lists with the additions that are being made this patch, and break down some of the stuff that we're gonna be seeing on here. Alright. 8th of 28th August. Tower of Adversity tier list changes. Augusta is added as a tier 0 DPS on both tier lists. This is including with signature and without. Augusta is a beast damage-wise, able to perform at all levels of investment from R0 to R1 with premium or free-to-play teammates. I would dare say that her best teammates actually are some of the ones that are a bit more free-to-play. We expect Yuno to be her best secondary buffer, but currently, even just using Mortifi, she has performance rivaling the other tier 0 DPS characters, which is frankly impressive. So yes, Augusta is going to get better with the release of Yuno, because Yuno has some very specialized buffs in her kit that are looking to, like, straight up amplify a lot of Augusta's outgoing damage. But Mortifi is so strong at an S6 that he actually goes ahead and gives you kind of like tier 0 performance with the 4-star DPS. And that to me is like pretty impressive. That's pretty strong. And that's why I've been recommending this character as like a free-to-play sort of like godsend for a lot of people, because you don't really need a lot of investment 5-star wise to get a lot out of her. She's looking to be quite a strong carry for both veterans and new players alike, especially when it comes to her weapon choices, because if you have Gion's signature, well, she gets the job done. Now, let's read some of the other updates. Mortifi, tier 1 to tier 0.5 on the signature tier list. Mortifi's team flexibility only extends further this update. From Gion to Phoebe to a usable free-to-play Zani, Jinxie, Monofusion teammate, and now even finding a new best team with Augusta. He was initially ranked higher on the R0 tier list than R1 due to not being as competitive at higher vertical investments, but with Augusta's release, that got changed, because Mortifi, with a static miss, ladies and gentlemen, gives a lot of attack, especially when he's S6, and his amplification is nothing to joke about either, and his buffing potential is best in class when it comes to heavy attack characters. Next up, Chakona DPS is being removed from both tier lists. Thank God, this sucked ass. While DPS Chakona technically still isn't the worst idea ever, it's a much better idea in Whimpering Wastes than ToA, as she offers constant damage output over a long period of time with a lot of grouping for doing multiple Forte heavy attacks. Unfortunately, yeah, in the ToA, this doesn't actually deal that much damage, and it's a lot of input for, like, performance that's not very good. In single target situations, which you will mostly face in ToA, this alternative playstyle of hers is still usable, but we chose not to illustrate it on our tier list anymore due to how niche it is compared to her standard hybrid use case. Nobody does this, and it's like, you gotta put on like a different Sonata set on her to make full use of it. The reason why I am like so against this being on the tier list is because, well, if you have a DPS character using arrow erosion stuff, you want them on Windward Pilgrimage. But Chakona's best set is actually on Gusts of Welkin. And so kind of like the end result is that you build a suboptimal set on her to play her as a DPS, and then she's not even that good as a DPS. So I'm glad that it's off the tier list for that explanation alone, because let's just be honest here, it can kind of, I feel like it can fuck a couple of people over if they're reading that and then thinking that she's like actually top tier. So glad it's taken off, but do know that it still actually is playable. How niche it is compared to her standard hybrid use case, so we removed her from the DPS category altogether in this mode, though she is kept as a usable DPS in WhiWa, which is fair enough to me. Now, let's keep moving on, and before we take a look at the Whimpering Waste tier list, let's just review what the actual ToA list is looking like. So, this is what tier 0 currently is on the Prydwen tier list. We got Augusta, we got Carlotta, we got Kartithia and Zadi over in tier 0. I think that Augusta, as you can clearly see over here, she might be one of the only units, and I think there's a reason why she's at the very top, that doesn't have any of these red marks. These red marks essentially mean that this is something that's like kind of taking away from the character that is like a bit of a weakness of theirs. That's why partner's in there for Zani, and Augusta doesn't really have that. However, I will say that Augusta maybe should get the ult tag, because if you don't have enough ER on this unit, her rotation is actually completely fucking cooked. She is very ultimate reliant on the first cast, which isn't the special one, you know, where she does like this and then, you know, slashes. She's reliant on her baseline liberation to even build up the ascendancy to cast her liberation, her enhanced one, in the first place. So I think that tag should be on here. I do think it is an actual noticeable weaker part of her kit. But yeah, I would say she definitely belongs up here due to her performance with some of the existing 4-star units in the game. And of course, her damage output is great. She's got a little bit of clunk in her trunk when it comes to like missing attacks. But overall, I mean, the output is there. And when you go and you look at it with signatures, yes, the output is still there with signatures as well. All the other updates on here, I think, are relatively pretty static compared to the tier list that we've covered before. Like, we're going to see we have Camellia in here in tier 0.5, Jinsei and Phoebe as well. I think that these characters, definitely Camellia and Phoebe, maybe don't have as high of a damage output, or the rotations do feel a little bit longer compared to some of the other characters that we're seeing in here. So nothing too overall surprising. And then you play Jinsei really well. She can be potentially seen as a tier 0 unit too. And now we got tier 1. And I feel like this is where stuff gets a little bit weird, a little bit suspicious. I'm just gonna be real with you. I feel like certain units on here maybe should just be bumped down. I think the tier 1 category does look really, really, really populated. And I think we're maybe getting to the point where like Encore and like Havoc Rover maybe don't belong here anymore. Maybe one of them can pop up in tier 1.5, but everybody else I feel like does kind of fit this spot relatively well. That's just my take. All the other characters in the DPS category, like, you go beyond, like, tier 1.5, it just gets a little bit murky. You can kind of all blend them together because these guys in particular aren't really used that much. Now, when it comes to the sub-DPS characters, I think that this list is actually pretty solid, but I would dare say Mortefi should actually go to tier 0 on the R0 list. I think the fact that Mortefi is now, like, a premier support for Phoebe, he's also support for this unit over here, and then also this unit down here, and even with Zani as well in the budget teams. I'm just gonna be honest, guys. Mortefi is potentially used on more teams than Sanhua now, and Mortefi does a lot more personal damage than Sanhua too, and he also has access to Static Mist, which Sanhua does not. And this is kind of like a fact of the situation. This Static Mist existing in the game automatically is going to elevate Mortefi to a super high level because of that increasing attack buff that's going to be there on outro skills. I genuinely do think that this is like, I think he's at the point where he's actually tier 0. Especially when we're doing it without signatures. When we're doing it with signatures, I think that he's in the perfect spot, sharing it with Sanhua over here. This entire situation makes a ton of sense to me. But at R0, I think you can consider Static Mist to be R0 or something like that, right? I don't think that that's too much of a deal, too much of a big deal. Everyone should have a copy of it by now. And so, yeah, that's just my one recommendation over here. But Mortefi up. Everything else, Cantarella in tier 1 without her sig, makes sense to me. With her sig, she's definitely bumped up a little bit. And then all this other, you know, the kind of like garbage over here. Yeah, I don't really recommend units in tier 1.5 and below, especially in the sub-DPS category, except maybe Dan Jin for fun. But yeah, it's just, there are just better options for every single team nowadays. And now we got the support category. We got Shorekeeper. We got Verena. I think in ToA specifically, these two characters should still be up here. Though in Whimpering Wastes, it might be worth a bit of a movement or two. And then you got Arrow Rover over here just because they're good with Cartithia. Spectra Rover, kind of just existing as a sustain, but being a little bit more solid as a sub DPS than Baija underneath them both. And then these kind of like trash units down here. It is what it is, right? Doesn't change too much with signatures. This is the main category. And so, yeah, my main suggestions are think about some of the movement over here and then bring Mortefi up. Now, let's take a look at Whimpering Wastes tier list. So, before we get into Whimpering Wastes tier list changes, it's worth noting that there is an issue with overinflated enemy HP pools, which is severely affecting a ton of character performances. We're holding off on any major changes for now and are simply adding Augusta and adjusting the placement of the recently added Frolova. But if the HP pools stay the same in the next WhiWa reset, expect the tier list to look way different. This is something that I'm really glad that Prydwen is doing a bit of an announcement for, because holy shit. Basically, if you're in Whimpering Wastes right now, this is the only unit that feels like they are dog shit in the game mode. Everyone actually legitimately feels like not good in it currently, because the HP pools have gotten high, and Frolova's aftersound mechanic feels like the only one that's able to actually deal with that rising amount of HP. And she is tier 0 in the current iteration of WhiWa with 114% HP inflation. Every other character is like a tier 2 or tier 3 or tier 4. That's just how it is. It's like her in tier 1, tier 0. Everyone else is in tier 3 or 4. Even Augusta. I'm not even joking. So yeah, that's just like a bit of like warning in advance, Prydwen will probably explain more. Augusta, added as a tier 0.5 DPS on both tier lists. On her end of things, Augusta and WhiWa is in a similar position to high-ranking ToA characters like Carlotta and Cartithia. Due to the backloaded nature of her damage, her liberation is almost all of her damage. Even though she does have a good amount of damage spread across her whole rotation, her kit is undeniably more tailored towards boss encounters than clearing several waves of small enemies over an extended period of time, which causes her to rank lower in WhiWa than ToA, even though she's more than capable of clearing. Augusta currently has a bug in the game mode, where when she stops time with her liberation, well, enemies won't continue spawning. And so you'll literally use Sublime as the Sun, Everbite Protector, the move where she goes like this and then does like the spin slash and blows shit up and does like 200k damage. It can literally hit nothing because all the enemies that were frozen in her liberation are dead and no more ones spawn. So when that situation occurs, this character is actually probably the worst WhiWa unit in the game. But the devs have said they're exploring the bug, and they probably, they're probably going to fix it in a day or two. So, yeah, that's my one stipulation that's, like, kind of wrong with her. I feel like if enemies keep spawning during her liberation after they die, and she's actually able to, I don't know, actually deal damage with the second hit of her liberation, there's no issues at all. I think she'll be good. But yeah, from the play testing that I've done with her, that I imagine Prydwen has done as well, maybe they considered her liberation not working properly and then factored that into her score. Because maybe potentially she actually is tier 0 if it ends up working right. But maybe not. Just something to keep in mind. Now we got Frolova's update. Tier 0.5 to tier 0 on the no signature tier list. We'll be upfront and say it. And I told them this. I told them this numerous times. Frolova is the single strongest DPS in WhiWa bar none. Absolutely. She is, without a doubt, the best one in the game. Her reliance on limited weapons like her signature and Stringmaster does not matter, because much like Cartithia and ToA, her damage potential is so high in the mode, it doesn't even matter to reach. To put it lightly, scores above clear thresholds. Hence, she's become tier 0 on both tier lists. Because of that after-sound stacking mechanic that I just talked about before, this unit is, like, so stupidly strong, because you have to play for 2 minutes in WhiWa. You just naturally start stacking this up, gaining a fuck ton of critical damage, and then you also increase the motion value of her Scarlet Coda, which already nukes, but you're adding 82.5% extra for each stack of Aftersound. And then you gain crit damage too for each stack of Aftersound. So it's like quadratic DPS scaling the longer the fight goes on. And, well, in the game mode where you have to fight for a set period of time, who could have thought that this unit was going to be a little bit busted in there? So, yeah, she's, like, okay in ToA, but her WhiWa performance is head and shoulders above everybody else. And that's where the kind of, like, well, the kind of, like, disclaimer is over here. Because when we go on the WhiWa tier list, yeah, tier 0 over here, if the WhiWa was currently updated based off of the current WhiWa, and the HP doesn't actually go down, and it's like this every reset, this is the new tier list. It's maybe Frolova, Changli, it's Frolova in tier 0, Changli in, like, tier 1, and then, like, all these other characters in the game, they're in, like, tier 2 or tier 3. Actually at the bottom, just sharing it with everybody else. Because you're really not getting decent clear times unless you are sweating your balls off in Quick Swap with both the token combinations and the HP combinations that we have over here. I think that the only WhiWa team right now that can actually reasonably perform outside of Frolova's is a, like, Chang, Li, Brant, Lupa team. Because of how many buffs Lupa's able to give and the fact that, well, these units all have, like, nukes built into their kit. So, yeah, it's like the Havoc team and then the Fusion team are the only ones that feel slightly playable without tailored tokens around them. And Augusta right now still because she's bugged, still kind of feels like shit, even with a tailored token that amplifies her damage by like 100% is available. So, yeah. One thing I will say about supports over here is that Shorekeeper ends up feeling a lot better than Verena based off of the stage that you're on. This is my take when it comes to WhiWa currently. The meta for WhiWa when it comes to supports is A, you actually want Verena on side 1, and then you want Shorekeeper on side 2. If you're like running Shorekeeper on side 1, she feels like shit because she doesn't start with her liberation, right? You only get Concerto energy restored to 100%. Verena has no weaknesses at all because Verena gives all of her buffs just from using her outro skill. Shorekeeper needs her liberation. So Shorekeeper oftentimes just feels a lot better down here. She's S over here, and then Verena feels like an S over here. And so I would dare say, on average, Shorekeeper actually is stronger because of those crit buffs, but because of like those stage differentiations, that's actually one way that Verena is sort of like keeping up. So yeah. Some people have been talking about how Verena should maybe be knocked down with how, you know, important crits can be and landing crits can be. But having a good experience on this first rotation is also something to really think about as well, especially with how the game mode's gotten a little bit harder. So, yeah, that's just my take over here. I would just say overall, the Prydwen tier list, it's fucked for WhiWa, right? And if Kuro Games tones down on the HP inflation, brings it back down to like pre-patch levels, maybe doesn't keep it that low, maybe raises it like a little bit compared to like the pre-patch levels, but just doesn't go at the level that they're at right now, this tier list probably makes sense. But at least in the current state, there's a lot more reevaluation that needs to be done if next reset is just like this current one with different tokens. So yeah, that'll be that. That'll be my take of wisdom over here. Let's just see if there are any line items over here that we should necessarily talk about. Okay, so I would dare say Cantarella should probably be bumped up to tier 0.5 based off the discussion that we just had about Furlova. Furlova really likes building up aftersound, and Cantarella is the fastest aftersound stacker in the game, because she's got 4 echo skills, which are needed to stack that buff. And so, with Furlova being the best overall WhiWa character and Cantarella being Furlova's best support, if Phoebe's gonna be in tier 0.5, when Confession Phoebe is actually dog shit in any other team other than Zani, I think Cantarella's gotta be tier 0.5 or tier 1, right? It's, you know, if we're gonna use the partner tag as a way to elevate people, like, Confession Phoebe only works with Zani, right? Furlova's a better DPS than Zani in this game mode, and then Cantarella is Furlova's best support. Cantarella's got to be bumped up. That's just my take on the matter. She's got to go up if Furlova's going to be up too. Let's just check it out with signatures. And then signatures, right? Cantarella's bumped up. I would dare say, with signatures, maybe put Cantarella in tier 0. I think that Furlova is just way too good of a unit in this game mode, and Cantarella is way too good of a teammate for this unit in this game mode for this sort of placement to, like, continue. Think about their best teams and how they perform in WhiWa. Cantarella is not at the level of any of these other characters. It is what it is. But, yeah, I think we really do need to accentuate Furlova's strength a bit more. All right, so we've covered all of the tier lists. I don't really have any big issues at all with what's going on over here. We've already gotten the disclaimer from Prydwen. It is what it is. Now let's check out what their Zani page is looking like and, well, get on into the review and see what our take is on the character and see if we agree. All right, so let's start off with the pros. Very high single target and AoE damage alike, all the while providing small but easily refreshed shields for extra sustainability. Not necessarily wrong. Able to function with premium teammates and without, has amazing free-to-play options which allow her to perform even without high vertical investment. Very true. Use an S6 Mortify. Completely stops time during your second liberation, meaning you're fully invulnerable during the cast. I mean, she also doesn't deal that much damage while the time is stopped, so it kind of swings both ways. And she also summons a really cool blazing sun in the sky when casting her second ultimate. How is that necessary? Well, you know summons a moon, so yeah, there's that too. About half of her damage is concentrated in her second ultimate. Now we're getting into the cons. Backloaded damage isn't optimal for killing several groups of small enemies like in Whimpering Wastes. If her ultimate worked properly in WhiWa, I think this wouldn't be as much of a con. Maybe Prydwen doesn't know it's a bug, or maybe they are factoring it in, and, you know, the fact that she can use her nuke on only, like, 2 enemies and doesn't really get to, like, easily choose when to use it, that could be also an issue as well. Near unusable in quick swap compositions due to the way her outro works. She can work in quick swap, it's just really hard to figure her out and actually get her working properly. It feels a little bit janky, because you gotta, like, time your outro skills at super precise moments and not waste too much time on the other character. It's just really difficult to play her like that. Shields don't leave you immune to interruption. Be wary to dodge enemy attacks so your rotation doesn't get slowed down by enemy attacks. Augusta has a massive issue with getting interrupted because her attack chains are kind of long and they require her to get close to the enemy, and she also moves a lot. I'm not gonna say that Augusta is the easiest character ever. She's kind of like a Carlotta that requires way more effort to play, but has like different animations, different mechanics, and honestly, probably better AoE. And so she kind of like has similar damage to Carlotta, has more weaknesses, but also has like more AoE potential, and naturally more utility, like the sustain, all of that stuff. So yeah. Try to read any of her ability descriptions aside from a resonance skill. Just kidding. Might as well go read a Shakespeare play instead. Yeah, her skill descriptions are unnecessarily long. Another con that I would put on here is her deleting on-field entities made by teammates. She deletes Hikari, when she uses her second liberation. She deletes Chakota when she uses her second liberation. Basically, all on-field things from, like, other teammates disappear when she uses her second liberation. And that kills her synergy with certain characters. Doesn't, like, kill it completely, but greatly reduces its potential. And that just feels kind of off, right? However, I do think that's a bug that should be fixed, but I'm just surprised that she's released with so many bugs. Again, I think Kuro Games really needs to, like, figure out what they're doing with the beta testers. I think they fucked up with this version. They were probably too busy staring at Yuno's feet instead of testing out Augusta's kit. And here we are. So, yeah, I would tell them to go figure it out so that her release, so that, you know, 5-star releases can go smoothly in the future. But, yeah, I would just say overall, Prydwen is hitting the nail on the head when it comes to her analysis. Yeah, she's a great value unit. She's not a must-pull at all if you're a more tenured veteran player. But if you're somebody that's new to the game and want somebody that's a little bit more challenging to play than Carlotta, but has, like, potentially greater rewards, I would say go for it, right? Go for this character. But if you're new to the game and you also want to play, like, you know, wheelchair style and have as much help as possible and, like, a lot less room to fuck up, go play Carlotta. She's also on banner too. So this is, to me, like, this is, like, the new player patch that Kuro Games has ready. You got two of the best, like, free-to-play DPSs in the game. One's for people who, like, only have partial control of their hands. The other one is for people that, you know, want to get a little bit more spicy with it. But yeah, both are very new player friendly on both sides. And yeah, hopefully I've, I guess, broken down the unique characteristics of the two. But yeah, that's that for the Prydwen tier list. Overall, I would say great update as a whole. I know it wasn't, like, that crazy, and we have given our feedback on where we still, where we think there still needs to be some changes. But yeah, having the tier list with signature and without signature is a great add. Glad that they put it in, and we're able to do, you know, some pretty decent analysis with it. So yeah, that'll be that for that one. Let me know what you all thought about this breakdown, and peace out.